look at what I passed out to you yesterday on here. Because I put a lot more pages on there. You weren't here, right? You also want your test results back, huh? What I passed out a couple of things yesterday, so I'll do it again. At least I'll give you this. Okay, the first four items I told you, the variable cost, fixed cost, semi-variable cost, I gave you the pages they're on, right? Okay, all the way up to CVP on page 122, page 145, break even, 137. And then we got the full costing, that's where we start dealing with full costing and variable costing, chapter 5, right? So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items pertain to chapter 4. Now, they're just going to be general questions from chapter 4. Okay? True or false? Total fixed cost remains the same when the level of activity changes within a relevant range. Doesn't your fixed cost stay the same?
Always there.
Yeah, right? If your activities change, so if I make one of these or if I make 100 of these, my fixed cost is the same. My variable cost change, but my fixed cost is the same, right? Mixed costs are referred to as semi-variable costs, true or false? Do you see where I got semi-variable costs? Example, page 126. Why would you read that page? And that answers that question. Direct labor and manufacturing overhead costs. Direct labor and manufacturing overhead costs are examples of fixed costs, true or false? Direct labor and manufacturing overhead are examples of fixed costs? No. Direct labor varies, doesn't it? If you have a person working and they work 40 hours for you, or if they work 20 hours for you, wouldn't that vary? So direct labor is a variable cost. Committed fixed costs. See committed fixed cost on page 125? Are costs that can be changed easily in a relatively brief period of time. Can you do it? Look at page 125, it tells you if it can be changed relatively easy. Okay, did you see why I gave you these specific pages? In order to use CVP, page 122 and page 145, analysis, costs must be separated into fixed and variable components. Costs must be, now if you read page 122, that will tell you that. Okay, that's basically from chapter.
You said in order to use CVP what?
CVP, page 122. Analysis, costs must be separated into fixed and variable costs. Okay, going on to, well, here's another one. What else I got here? Break-even point, page 137. At the break-even point, total fixed cost equals the total contribution margin. If you read page 137, it'll tell you the answer. Okay, break-even point. Okay, see the next one, full costing. Full costing is, if you read if you go to page, one of the pages in there, full costing is considered fixed manufacturing overhead as the inventory cost, considers fixed production cost as period cost, is another name for variable costing. Well, it can't be another name for variable costing, full costing. Remember, it's taking the splitting up of the overhead, from variable overhead to fixed overhead. So full costing is taking what? Taking them both, consider it. You're adding into inventory, right? On variable costing, when do you do it? On variable costing, you take the fixed overhead and you expense it. Remember that? Okay? Which of the following is accounted for as a product cost? Product cost. is what? Inventory, right? It's not an expense. In variable costing. Fixed manufacturing overhead. We're talking about variable costing. How can fixed be a product cost? Okay? Product delivery cost to a customer. Product advertising. Variable manufacturing overhead. What are we talking about? Variable manufacturing overhead, right? Fixed manufacturing overhead, right? So if we're talking about variable, we're talking about variable?
The answer's within itself.
Yes. In full costing, full costing is where we take the fixed overhead and add it to the product cost, which is the inventory, right? In full costing, when does fixed manufacturing overhead become an expense? When it's sold. It's not expensed immediately. In variable costing, fixed manufacturing overhead is expensed in the period in which it's occurred. Remember that? I'll show, here's an example of a problem. I mean, really simple. 8 companies, fixed manufacturing overhead is $235,000. Eight companies, fixed manufacturing overhead costs $235,000. Okay, fixed corporate operating cost is $116,000. Operating cost is a what? Expense, right? Under full costing, how should these costs be classified? It's gonna be product cost, period cost, and product cost. Operating cost is a what? Normal operating expense of the business. It's an expense on which it occurs. Manufacturing overhead is a what? Product cost, right? You just gotta pick these out. You know, if you could do those exercises that we did in the book for what is full costing and variable costing, you'll nail every one of these. Those simple exercises, and we did that one after another. Okay? And for chapter 6, if managers are not charged for central administrative services, what may managers likely do? They're not charged for how much they have to pay for use of that copy machine. If managers are not charged for central administrative service, what may managers likely do? Limit the frivolous use of the service. I don't know, they're gonna use it, right? Consider the services are free. Evaluate and consider lower cost alternatives for the service. Seek outside suppliers. I think it's free. They're not charged, right? Indirect costs occur when? Indirect costs. That's part of overhead, right? Indirect costs. Costs are directly traced to the product or service. Controllable costs are incurred by the cost objective. Resources are shared by more than one product or service. Indirect costs occur when resources are shared by more than one product or service. And then, these are easy. What is the major difference between ABC and ABM? Yes, other than that. Okay. How many distinct activities are used most companies using the ABC system? How many distinct activities? That means, like here we have activities, the cost pools. We had 7 of them. The more the better. 25, 50, If you could break it out, all that overhead, the more activities you can allocate to a specific department, the better. Okay? Just remember that. Which of the following is not a service department of a typical manufacturing firm? Which of the following is not a service department? Fabrication, maintenance, personnel, security. Which of the following is not a service department? Service department is what? Just here, when you answer questions, you're eventually gonna take some, maybe, some exams for civil service. You look for something that's similar in every question, and then it's obvious the answer, the difference. Look at this question. Which of the following is not a service department in a typical manufacturing? What is service department? It's not somebody who physically touches the product, right? It's what? The overhead, correct? Or, if it's not the overhead, what it has to be? The advertising department, the sales department, the president's office. Wouldn't that be a service? Okay, now, look at here. Which of the following is not a service department? Even if you couldn't figure out what a service department was. Security, personnel, that's your human resources. Is that maintenance? Isn't that outside the work in process? Fabrication. Fabrication is actually making it. Which of them is not a service department? Fabrication. Why? Because they're physically touching it. The other ones are departments that run the company, that are in the company, they're overhead. The people in maintenance are overhead. The people in personnel are overhead, or direct expenses. Security is overhead. Fabrication is somebody who actually works at it. Their work in process. Does that make sense? Look up also cost plus contract. Make sure you write on here cost plus contract. Cost plus contract. That I think is a little bit in chapter 8. Well, no, probably, nah, wait a minute, I don't think you have to do that, because I want to give you the answer for some of these. There's 2 of them that are in chapter 8 out of 1. Don't do that cost plus, I'll give you the answer to that.
So you're gonna give us 2 of the answers out of 35?
Yeah. Remind me to do that.
Oh, I don't know.
Remind me, yeah.
So as far as this problem that we went over today?
Yeah.
For the test?
Yeah. It won't be anywhere from that completely. It may be like the first department.
The only reason I asked is like, use the calculator, if I just continue following the operation.
Oh, yeah.
Different numbers.
It's gotta be relatively close. You'll see it's folklore.